Hi, everyone. Welcome to First and North. I'm Luke Canellis. NFL free agency slowing down now that we're just 30 days away from the NFL draft in Green Bay. Joining me this week on First and North, the voice of the Lions, Dan Miller, from Fox Milwaukee, Lily Zhao, and from Fox Minneapolis, Pierre Nugent. All right, guys, the NFLPA Classic Golf Tournament going on in Mexico. A lot of our local teams, players are down there right now showcasing their golf games. But more importantly, hey, how about this? We had a J.J. McCarthy sighting down there, Pierre. He joined Kay Adams on her show earlier today, said he's 100% healthy. You cool with McCarthy being in Mexico golfing with a lot riding on him this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just in Mexico City myself a couple of weeks ago. Why not? It's a beautiful place. Might as well go down there and have a little fun. Yeah, I don't have an issue with J.J. McCarthy being down in Mexico playing a little golf right now. If it's clear with the doctors, if he says he's feeling 100% healthy to do it, go ahead and do it. I have no issue with this. It's not like he's playing basketball, or it's not like he's playing flag football on the beach or anything of that nature. So I don't have a huge issue with this whatsoever. And I know he told Kay Adams some interesting things about him being the #1 quarterback, or whether the Vikings have not told him about him being the #1 quarterback, that I'm sure, Lou, you probably are going to ask me here in just a minute.
Yeah, we're going to listen to J.J. McCarthy right now because news broke last week that the Vikings are moving forward with McCarthy instead of pursuing Aaron Rodgers. Here's what McCarthy had to say on Up and Adams about the Vikes' decision and if he's been told that he's quarterback one.
We found out, a lot of that was being made about Aaron Rodgers. He might be coming there. He's interested. Of course he would be. It's such a great situation. Right. So I feel like we as a fan base or even media found out, like, you're the guy, the guy recently. When did you know? When did they tell you, or when was that message to you?
They haven't told me, and I'm happy they didn't, because I try to earn it every single day, and I never want that to be given to me, and it's such a privilege and opportunity to give me that chance, and I'm just going to make the most of it every single day.
All right, Pierre, is this the right call by the Vikings, or do you think that they should tell McCarthy, you're our guy, so he's mentally prepared to lead the Vikes?
Well, as of right now, J.J. McCarthy is probably doing the Will Smith Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meme where he's looking around the room. There's nobody else there. And it's like, well, I'm the only one. I mean, at this point, I'm the de facto quarterback. No disrespect to Brett Rippon, who's the other quarterback on the roster right now. But there's nobody else. There's nobody else to be the starting quarterback as of right now for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think it should be fairly obvious to him that he is the starter right now. But I certainly appreciate what he had to say. J.J. McCarthy, the person, has certainly won a lot of us over. He's a terrific young man with a good head on his shoulders. J.J. McCarthy, the NFL quarterback, is still an unproven commodity. So unless the Vikings are going to revisit the issue of possibly bringing Aaron Rodgers back, as of right now, J.J. McCarthy is the starting quarterback. I don't see anybody else who's stepping up to the job right now and challenging him for that role.
All right, stand by, Pierre, because I do have a follow-up, but I want to bring in Dan. Dan, you've been doing this a long time in the NFL. Do you think quarterbacks drafted in the first round like McCarthy should be appointed the starting job right away, or should they go out and earn it?
I think you have to earn it. And I think that we've seen kind of an evolution in this thing where some of these kids come in and they're ready to play right away. I should say young men come in and they're ready to play right away. But the question is, what kind of damage will it do? You've got to know that somebody is ready to come in and play right away. It's much different than college. You're dealing with much more sophisticated defenses. The window that tells you a receiver's open is much smaller than it was in college. So I really think that's where it's incumbent, and we talk about this all the time, on a franchise's ability to develop a player. And if their instincts tell them he's ready to go, then I say go ahead and put him out there. But I think most times there's a decent chance that sitting allows them to learn a little bit about the game. I don't think it's anywhere near where it used to be, where they have to sit for a long time. But I do think there is value in sitting back and watching. But I also, first and foremost, I put the onus on the team to understand the player and what will best help his development. Because, look, nobody's going to tell Washington that Jaden Daniels needed to sit last year, because he certainly didn't. So, again, that's a team decision that has to be based on what they see in his aptitude, in his character, in his ability to handle the ups and downs of playing in the NFL.
Hey, Lily, I'm sure you have an opinion on this, especially with the Packers having a history of drafting quarterbacks and sitting them down, learning from veterans. Granted, Rodgers learned from Favre and George Jordan Love learned from Rodgers? Favre, a Hall of Famer. Rodgers well on his way to Canton, Ohio as well when he decides to hang it up and then sit out the amount of time that he has to wait before he can go on the ballot. But today, in this day and time, do you still think that there's value in quarterbacks sitting and learning?
I think there is if that's the situation the quarterback goes to. You know, if it's a team that has an established veteran quarterback that is still on their roster and he has a chance to learn, why not? And like Dan said, I think these quarterbacks drafted in the first round, they have to earn that spot. But again, if they're coming into a team that has a veteran that eventually will be leaving the team because his time will be over, and you know they're kind of on the roster at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have the young quarterback learn from the veteran and get some advice from him. And I'll say Jordan Love, I don't think he would have been ready to play his rookie season. So the fact that he was able to sit 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers, learn from one of the best, I think that really helped him when he took his first snaps as the official starting quarterback for the Packers. But their situation is unique. You have a Jaden Daniels, you have CJ Stroud when he was a rookie. These guys, they earned their spot. They were ready to play, but I don't think it ever hurts to have a guy, learn from the best if they have that ability. But if they're the only guy on the team and all eyes are on him to be that starting quarterback, he has to go out and earn it and prove why he's that guy.
I actually believe that Ryan Poles handled it perfectly here in Chicago. He made the decision early on. Listen, Caleb Williams is our guy. We want no distractions. He traded Justin Fields to Pittsburgh, and he went with Caleb Williams. Pierre, I want to go back to the Vikings for a second because reports have them considering Ryan Tannehill. Would you bring in Tannehill?
I know. I saw that report as well, Lou. I'm sure it's certainly something that's under consideration. Don't really know how much good football there is left really with Ryan Tannehill. I thought perhaps maybe they might give Drew Lock a look as well to potentially be the backup here in Minnesota. But Tannehill, who sat out last year, he does give them a veteran presence who I think could be a steady presence in the locker room for J.J. McCarthy. Now, if J.J. McCarthy is presumed the starter and goes down with injury and Ryan Tannehill has to step in, he's certainly capable of keeping the ship afloat. But at this stage of his career, that would make me a little bit nervous. I can't lie. I think there might be better options at the backup spot for Minnesota. Ryan Tannehill, I don't think would be the worst option in the world. But at the same time, too, I think the Vikings would be smart to keep their options open as of right now for that backup spot.
All right. I heard a crazy thing on the radio this morning. Can't even believe it's being discussed. Is there any chance the Vikings bring back Kirk Cousins, who wants out of Atlanta?
I really don't see it. I don't see, even though, the contract is what the contract is, but I'm sure they would have to revise some numbers. But if Kirk Cousins, came back to Minnesota, he would presumably be the backup, because I don't understand why you would move forward with Kirk Cousins for this season when you have J.J. McCarthy sitting right there. Kirk Cousins is going to want to go somewhere where he has a chance to be the starter. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be the case here in Minnesota, so I'm not sure a reunion makes sense. If it makes sense dollars and cents wise, okay, I think I can get it from that perspective. But then you kind of create a little bit of an awkward scenario where you just waved goodbye to Kirk Cousins a year prior. You drafted his heir apparent, and now you want to bring him back to do what exactly? Because he's going to come in thinking that he's probably going to be the starter. So I don't really see a reunion making a lot of sense.
Dan, let me bring you in. Barry Sanders hopped on Good Morning Football, laid out his expectations for the Lions this season. Take a listen.
I know that Brad Holmes and Coach Campbell understand, what they're up against. But we still have most of our solid nucleus of young players who are in their prime. And there's no reason why, we can't be back in the playoffs and playing for a Super Bowl next year with the group that we have. I'm encouraged by when I see what the Eagles have done. I've seen, I feel like we've been right there on a similar same trajectory and path as the Eagles the last handful of years. The Lions and Eagles have been kind of the class of the NFC with, you can throw in there maybe the Niners, and another couple of teams. But I feel like we played as well as anyone in that division and should be right back there with an opportunity next year.
No one can argue with Barry Sanders, especially with what the Lions went through injury-wise. Dan, is it Super Bowl or bust for this Detroit Lions squad if they stay relatively healthy this year?
I never know what that means, Lou. What does bust mean? Because they didn't make it last year, and here they are just trying to figure out how to get there next year. But if the point is that their goal should be to win the Super Bowl. There's no question. That's what Philadelphia's goal should be. That's what the Lions' goal should be. That's what Minnesota's goal should be. That's what Buffalo's goal should be. That's what Kansas City's goal should be. All these teams sitting at or near the top of the NFL, that's your goal, is to go win a Super Bowl, because you realize you're good enough to do that if things fall into place. So don't set the bar any lower than that. And I think that's what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have done with this team. They're not talking about just winning the division. That's the first step. But they are talking about ultimately winning the Super Bowl. And I look at, Barry mentioned Philadelphia. Philadelphia knocked on the door a bunch of times in between their 2 Super Bowl wins and didn't get there. Then they got back and got it done. San Francisco knocked on the door a bunch of times and didn't get it done. Buffalo's knocked on the door a bunch of times and didn't get it done. So I think there's lessons in that you have to just keep coming back regardless of what happens. That's where I have a hard time wrapping my arms around what bust means. But you do understand that you're one of the top teams in this league. And you do understand that that should be your goal. But only one team ultimately gets to do that. That's where the heartbreak comes in. But going into the season, if you're thinking anything less, you're doing it wrong.
I'll tell you what, Dan, I have such great respect for what the Lions have created there in Detroit. Bears won the offseason, in my opinion. I know that there are those in Minnesota who will debate that. But now they have the NFL's assistant, coach of the year, led the Lions to score 68, if I'm not mistaken, offensive touchdowns. They led the league in scoring over 33 points a game. Now the question is, will it translate to the Bears so they can claim that they have a rivalry with the Lions and that they can compete with Minnesota and Green Bay? We can only hope in this town. Here's the difference. And, Dan, I'm going to give the ultimate respect to Brad Holmes. Johnson had GM Brad Holmes. I'm not saying Ryan Poles can't experience the same type of success that Holmes has so far, but it hasn't happened yet. And now Johnson's going to be alongside Ryan Poles, not Brad Holmes. And what Holmes has done can't be overlooked. I read this earlier today. Man, since Holmes' first draft in 2021, the Lions have hit on all 5 of his first-round picks. The Bears are going to have 4 selections amongst the first 72 picks. 2 for sure, maybe even 3 of his draft picks need to compete for starting jobs immediately for the Bears to lift themselves to Detroit's level. All right, we're going to take a timeout here on the show. NFL owners' meetings this coming weekend. There have been some proposed rule changes thrown out there. Should some of them be implemented? We're going to give you our thoughts next as we return here on First and North.
Dr. Larson has no recollection of the last 8 years.
Doc is TV's best new medical drama.
I need to know.
And you can watch it anytime.
I will be a doctor again.
Doc, all new Tuesdays on Fox, and watch anytime on Hulu.
All right, we're back here on First and North. Luke Canellis with you at our Fox 32 studios in Chicago. Dan Miller's at Fox in Detroit. Lily Zhao, Fox Milwaukee, Pierre Nugent in Minneapolis. All right, the annual NFL owners meetings start this Sunday. They go till Wednesday. Plenty to talk about with teams proposing changes. We're going to go through a few of those changes or proposed changes, see if they should pass or not, according to our little crew here. Reminder, all rules must be approved by 75%, so 24 of the 32 owners in order for these proposed rules to be implemented. And I'm going to start with a rule change that the Lions have proposed, and that's eliminating automatic first downs for defensive holding and illegal contact penalties. Lions were called for the most penalties in this area last season. Dan, I'll start with you since you saw it firsthand. What do you think?
I don't know that this passes, but I do think there is an issue here in that this is probably next to pass interference, which could be 50 yards, and fumbling the ball out of your end zone where you lose it and give it to the other team on a touchback, the most significant penalty that we have in this game. And where it really comes into play is when you get a 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17, and you get a defensive holding or an illegal contact, and all of a sudden that 5-yard penalty becomes a first down. I don't know that there's a perfect solution, though, because you're opening up the door at that point that if somebody gets beat, they're just going to tackle the receiver on 3rd and 12 and say, you know what, we'll give you 3rd and 7 and let you do it again. So I do think there is an issue here in the rule where it becomes extremely significant to allow a team to keep a drive alive on a penalty that might not be quite as significant at times. But I don't know that the solution of taking it off the table necessarily is going to wipe out any issues that you might have unintentionally by putting a new rule in there or wiping out the old rule of giving teams a first down. So I don't love the feel of a game when you get the bailout on one of these penalties, but I don't know necessarily that the other side of it is going to work either.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really torn on this proposed rule change because I think it allows below average defensive backs, if they're beaten on a play, they're going to grab, tackle, mug receivers, whatever they have to do. What do you think, Lily?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's no perfect solution because at the end of the day, if you know that you're only going to get 5 yards, you might as well just tackle the receiver if that's going to be the rule. So I don't think there's a perfect solution to what it is. I am kind of curious to see what the owners do decide on this rule, but I don't think it will pass as well. But there's no perfect solution for this scenario. So just very curious to see what they'll do. But yeah, I don't think if you eliminate a first down and all that stuff, it's going to, I know it's tough on defenders. I know it's tough on, the Terry and Arnolds of the world. And so curious to see what they do.
And listen, the NFL wants its quarterbacks and playmakers to rue the day out there and be the stars. All right, next rule proposed by the Philadelphia Eagles. They want to align the overtime rules and want them to be the same for the regular season and the playoffs, meaning both teams get a chance to touch the football in overtime. I agree with the Eagles on this one. Same overtime rules for the regular season as the playoffs. There's only 17 games. Every outcome has significance. We're not talking about 162 games or 82 games. 17 games. Every outcome, like I said, significant. And when it comes to the playoffs, regular season playoff seedings, frankly, coaches keeping jobs, every win is so important. Each team, in my opinion, should be given a chance to touch the football. Even if that team that wins the coin flip goes down and scores the touchdown, I still think the opposition, the other team, should have the opportunity as well. What do you think, Pierre?
No way. I completely disagree. I think you're still allowed to play defense in this league, last time I checked, even though the league makes it harder and harder for teams to play defense in this league. I wish they would go back to the old rule, Lou. I'm old enough to remember when it was just sudden death. Now, I agree that the kickers this day and age are a lot better than what they were in seasons past, so I certainly understand why you may not want the game to end on a field goal when the guys are certainly capable of hitting 60 yards or better, and the other team doesn't have a chance to respond. So I will concede on that. What I would like to see changed in the overtime rule is for the period to go from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. I think you have a lot better chance of having a tie game, for a game to end in a tie, with a 10-minute rule. If two teams get a field goal and you don't have an extra 5 minutes to potentially get a third or perhaps get a touchdown in that scenario, that's what I would like to see changed in the overtime rule. I think they should go to 15 minutes and not 10.
What do you think, Lily?
I agree with you, Lou. I like the fact that it's fair and equal in the playoffs and in overtime, and then it's fair and equal during the regular season as well. I know, just especially on the Packers side of things, during the Aaron Rodgers era, he didn't have a lot of chances to respond in overtime because the other team got the ball and went right down the field. I understand there's an aspect of playing defense, but I like the fairness aspect of it, so I'm hoping this rule passes and see if it does.
Dan?
I think I would allow this to pass. I would like both teams to get an opportunity to have the football. I agree with Pierre. I think part of the rule is that it would extend it to 15 minutes. I just don't like when one team gets the ball and marches down the field. Yes, you are allowed to play defense, but if you're going up against a team like Detroit, a team like Kansas City, a team like Minnesota who can throw it up to JJ and see what happens, I just think it's to me, there's equity in both teams getting their hands on the ball at least once. And I feel like that would be the way to go. If it's good enough for the playoffs, to me, I think you make a great point, Lou. You're only playing 17 games. Every one can be extremely significant. Then let's give it the understanding that it deserves, which is that it might be as important somewhere down the line as a playoff game. It's not elimination, but it might be the difference between you getting there or not.
All right, Pierre, I think the Vikings are in favor of this one. Lions want to reformat the playoff seedings and base it off of regular season records. So if a wild card team has a better record than a division winner, the wild card team is seeded higher than the division winner. Really would have helped the Vikings last season. So instead of being a 5 seed and playing on the road and not having the chance to play at US Bank Stadium, and believe me, no one hates listening to that horn more than I do when the Bears are there. But man, what a decided home field advantage they'd have. They deserve that with the way they played in the regular season. What do you think, Pierre?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit torn on this one, I have to admit, because it's not like Major League Baseball where I think you have to put extra emphasis on winning the division. I do think, however, that winning your division should still matter. And if Vikings fans are watching this right now, I would say to them, you know, I'm really sorry, but this was kind of a tough luck season for you. The only other team that had more wins than you just so happened to be in your division. That's not going to happen every single year. You can't count on that happening every single year. So I lean more towards keeping it as it is. And I think winning the division should still matter in the playoffs.
I completely disagree. Tampa Bay's won the South in the NFC the past 4 years, and I think their average record, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of that time is 9-8. They do not deserve home games. All right, what about the tush push, Dan?
You know what? I feel like this is a reaction to something that's happening now and something that really only one team has done a great job of mastering. It is because they have a freak at quarterback who's got some of the strongest legs in the league and can drive himself. It's not just the guys pushing him. You got to give Hurts some credit, too, for what he does when that pile is there and he just finds a way to drive himself through it. I feel like this is reacting to the moment and not necessarily reacting to what's happening in the long term of the game. I'd say leave it and just tell teams to deal with it, because I don't see a lot of other teams in the league that are extremely successful with this the way that Philadelphia is, and I'm not going to, adjudicate the game based on what one team does well.
Lily, give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this will pass. I know the Packers obviously are the ones that proposed the tush-push ban. And it's interesting because, again, they kind of do their own iteration of said tush-push with their tight end Tucker Kraft. And, yeah, there have been times where they've been successful against it and sometimes not. And I do agree it is reactionary. So, I don't see the owners voting in favor of banning the tush-push. And hopefully the Packers can do something this year in their playbook to kind of counteract that by having their own.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I hope the Bears, Dennis Allen, can come up with a way to stop the tush push as well. We need to take our final timeout. NFL draft just 30 days away. After free agency moves, do our teams know who they're targeting in the draft? We will discuss when we come back.
Stroopstork is known for cheese, laundry, and bowling.
You gotta be kidding me.
Going Dutch, all new Thursdays on Fox.
All right, last minute and a half. We are a month away from the NFL draft. Pierre, I'm going to start with you. If the Vikings keep the 24th pick, let's play mock draft. Where are they going?
Boy, Lou, they have a replacement they need to make at safety. And if you looked at Nick Emanwari's numbers from the draft combine, I mean, those numbers really just pop out and stand out at you. I think if the Vikings stay at 24 and Nick Emanwari is still on the board from South Carolina, that's where I'm going. I'd rather take the chance on the athlete, and he certainly put up some athletic numbers at the combine.
All right, Dan, Lions select 28th in the first round. Where are you leaning?
You said all those beautiful things about Brad Holmes and his ability to draft. The reason he's been good is because he lets the board dictate it, not their needs. I think it feels like offensive line or defensive line, but if you try to figure out what Brad Holmes is going to do, it's a fool's errand. I think he'll end up drafting the guy that he likes the best, and if it matches the needs, so be it.
All right, Packers, 23rd pick in the draft. Who do you want, Lily?
I know the Packers would be giddy to get a wide receiver in the first round, but I think they go cornerback. They lost 2 in the offseason. They do bring in Nate Hobbs, but I think cornerback a bigger need at the moment. I think that's the position they go for.
Here in Chicago, Bears and Ashton Genty, talks are growing immensely that the Bears are going to go out and grab the running back now that we've got Ben Johnson here. Absolutely not. This team needs another offensive lineman, preferably a left tackle like Will Campbell out of LSU, or another pass rusher. Guys, great job as always. Glad to be back with you. For Dan, Lily, and Pierre, I'm Lou Canellis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week here on First and North.